StreamYard, you almost had it. What's going on, people? We're back. It's another episode of Talkin TV. We're into February right now, about a month and a half in. The stocks have died down a little bit, but we're into award season now. There's been a lot of awards chatter going on just in general around certain nominations. Certain guy you know, Chris, a former musician, or actually I think still a current musician, member of 30 Seconds to Mars, was nominated for a Golden Globe. It made a big deal on the interwebs overall.
Did it?
It did, unfortunately. People still care about the Golden Globes. I made one comment and said, yeah, Ricky's not hosting. I don't give a shit.
Exactly. I saw that and I was like, yeah, okay, well, now that Dom informed me of that, not that I was going to watch it, because you guys kind of know how we both feel about award shows on this show, but I mean, if Ricky's not there, what are you doing it for?
Of all the pointless award shows that exist, the Golden Globes.
What's that independent film festival, that independent film award show?
The Indie Spirit Awards.
That's one I'm going to watch this year.
Yeah, that one.
They were on point last year.
Kroll and Mulaney crushed it hosting last year, and I think it's going to be even better this year. I also like the Critics' Choice and the SAG still. I like those.
Those aren't terrible from what I've heard. Yeah. I can't speak to it, but all I know is that the indie film, whatever one it's called, they gave Uncut Gems the justice it deserved last year, so I can respect that.
And that led to one of the greatest speeches that Adam Sandler has ever made in anything.
Exactly.
But with all that being said, it is going to be a very interesting Oscar and award season, to say the least, especially because Oscar voting still doesn't begin for another month, so it's still really interesting to see where things could go, especially given the wide array of nominations that have come out. Chris, that kind of built into our conversation about tonight because famously this will be the first Oscar award ceremony to include all the films released within the first third of 2021 in addition to films released in 2020. So you'll see films like potentially this film that we're about to talk about tonight, specifically Judas and the Black Messiah seems to be really the only one that's getting all of the nominations, although Pieces of a Woman has picked up a few overall. So what's just your take on that, just as far as kind of like if this is just kind of like a one-off thing to compensate for COVID, or if you think this will like continue and potentially continue to happen as time goes on?
Yeah, so first of all, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Talkin TV podcast. Only reason I'm doing this right now, we got a ton of new subscribers this past week.
Yes,
we got 20 subscribers in 1 week, which is the most we've ever gotten. So shout out to you guys. Thanks for joining our community. We post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We go live at 8 p.m. most of those days, and if not, we post videos around 5 p.m. Keep your eyes peeled. We're consistent. We never miss a day. It's because you guys who joined the community. And so, Dom, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because before we even started talking about the film, I was going to be like, well, if I need some context, then I'm sure there's a bunch of listeners who need some context. So is Malcolm and Marie a 2020 film, or is it a 2021 film? Because I know there was an embargo and all these reviewers are like, it finally lifted, so here's my review, but they got it back in 2020. So I don't know what's going on here.
Malcolm and Marie was available for screeners and was presented at Toronto Film Festival online in 2020, but it was released wide on Netflix in 2021, therefore counting it as a 2021 film. Netflix is one of those weird situations where, to me, I go based off of when it's released. Now, that being said, it still qualifies for this year's Oscars. I don't agree with this choice personally. I think it makes things very confusing, but this qualifies for this year's Oscars, along with Judas and the Black Messiah and really any other film that is released between January and April. There are, of course, going to be exceptions. The bulk of the films will still be films released in fall of 2020, but that is how it works. So it is a 2021 film. This is technically the first official 2021 film we're talking about on this channel.
Okay, that's what I thought, but it's weird times, and
it's very weird times. So your confusion is justified.
And it's not like 2020's gone away. I mean, point in case, GameStop. So it's just like, I'm just still trying to figure things out. You know, I thought we wouldn't still be in this craziness, but we are. So that all makes sense. Then to answer your question, I don't like it. I think it's perfectly fine for right now, this point in time. Give these filmmakers a chance, because to be honest, the film industry had it very rough last year. I actually respect the Academy, and this is the only time I'll ever say that. I respect the Academy's decision to postpone it and give them some leeway, because this was out of everyone's hands, barring a few people. And so with that being said, yeah, it's fine for 2020, and I understand, but I really think it kind of throws off like just everything. You know, like
Yeah.
it throws off. I liked traditional Oscar season being where it was. It worked in my schedule. Maybe that's selfish, but like, I don't know, you know?
It happens. February is just the time of it's when to post all the big celebrations. It's when the Super Bowl is. That's when the Oscars are. That's when like it's just the best time. So them being delayed this year, obviously, it kind of just throws things off balance overall. But again, if there was ever a person to take over and kind of push the actual ceremony itself in a different technical direction than it's been before, it's Steven Soderbergh. Because I don't know why I've been like just kind of binge watching some of his movies recently. I watched Out of Sight and Haywire recently, and goddamn, the man is adaptable. The man has been working for a full solid four full decades now in Hollywood, and every single one of the movies he's put out has been at least unique, even if it's not good. So if there's anyone to executive produce this ceremony, it's him. So that'll be the first interesting thing. I still can't necessarily say
He's behind the Oscars.
He's behind the production of the Oscars. He's producing the ceremony.
Oh, okay.
He's
Do they
producing
now?
the ceremony.
Do they before we jump into the film of discussion tonight? Do they normally do that, or is this like a special COVID
They've
situation
had people
where?
produce before, but in this case, it's a special COVID situation because they're like,
Okay.
yeah, we need somebody who's like highly adaptable to this sort of stuff.
That's
So,
cool. I had no idea. Maybe
Yeah.
I will watch it then. I mean, I guess it's gonna be a spectacle either way,
Yeah,
and it might be one to watch just because of like the time and what we're all going through.
right.
What about you? Are you gonna watch it?
It's certainly going to be interesting, and it's going to depend on just where my interest is when the time comes. That's literally what it's going to depend
If
on.
you
Like,
have something to do that
if
night
I
or
have
not?
something else interesting going on that night, I'm not going to lie. That's probably going to take precedence. Like, I didn't watch the Super Bowl, but I usually never watch the Super Bowl. And to be honest, the commercials that came out of it, I watched them all beforehand. They were mostly lame. But
The Matthew
by the way,
McConaughey one was pretty great though.
the M. Night Shyamalan, the commercial for the new M. Night Shyamalan movie, Old, looks hilarious. Like, happening level hilarious. So
Yeah, it
definitely
does.
check that out if you get it.
But I actually want to see it for what I think it's gonna be, which is what you said, hilarious.
Okay.
And I mean, I just like at this point, I know what I'm gonna get with him. I think it's
Yeah.
like a solid like first act and then deterioration. So I'm cool with that because I know what I'm gonna get. And
M.
hey,
Night
real quick though,
Shyamalan's not a box of chocolates anymore.
no,
You
unfortunately,
know exactly what you're going to get from him.
but that's okay. I mean, it's fine. It's probably gonna be fun at least. It looks like it's gonna
Yeah.
be a good time, whether it's a good film or not. But real quick, the Matthew McConaughey commercial, since you brought up the Super
walk
Bowl,
me through
that's
it, 'cause
my
I didn't
standout.
watch it. I didn't watch it.
Oh, you gotta look it up, dude. It's for Doritos, and they shrink him
course it
down
is.
to like a piece of paper. I don't want to spoil any more. You gotta go and check it out. That was my number one Super Bowl commercial.
All right.
So
I know Timothée Chalamet was freaking out about a commercial that he was shot in where he like did an Edward Scissorhands lookalike, but I'm not too sure about that. So Chris, with all that being said, that was fun, our little catch up on the real world. But shall we dive into the land of movies once again?
yeah, let's do it, man.
Yeah, so tonight we're talking about Malcolm and Marie, which was a film that got a little bit of notice last year at Toronto International Film Festival. Famously, it is known for being a film shot entirely within quarantine in one location, one setting, one house. It stars John David Washington and Zendaya as the titular Malcolm and Marie as they return home after a night in which they were out at the debut of Malcolm's latest film, and they of course proceed to have a very Hollywood-esque argument over, how they value each other, and the film kind of seeks to establish like the real toxicity that goes into certain relationships, or at least that's what it seems to be banking off of, considering that this was very much in line with the little things as far as how paper thin it actually was with its subject matter. Like, can we just start there as far as where to actually talk about this film?
Sure, if that's the direction you want to take it.
Like, I think. Look, here's the problem. This was that movie that I'm watching the entire time, and I'm like, okay, I really want to enjoy this. It's like it's got all the pretentious artsy fartsy things that I like. It's shot in black and white. It's got the jazz backdrop. It's the performances are very like kind of hammy and over the top and very 1940s esque. And I'm like, okay, I can kind of see the subtle odes to old Hollywood there, and I could see the artistry. The problem is that only lasts for so long. And then as I'm forced to spend longer and longer with these people, and they're continuing to argue about their extremely privileged and upscale lives, and I'm forced to once again consider the question, why do I care? Like, there's only so much the good acting can get you as far as that goes, So,
yeah. Oh no, sorry. I let you finish. You finish.
I was handing that off to you there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I totally see all those points. While I think I disagree with a few of them, for me, I guess my first impression, and then we can probably dive in and get more specific. It was enjoyable. It's not like I'm going to like die on the hill of defending this film, but I certainly didn't hate it either. It was kind of like a middle of the road movie for me. I think it had more positives than negatives. And I do really respect the fact that it was shot in quarantine, that it was originally supposed to be a thriller, but then sort of like the more romantic partner, prevailing partner angle sort of took place without throwing any spoilers into it. And so that's kind of cool. And also, if you think about like how quickly they got this thing shot and made, I also can respect that. I think that's the film school student in me, and you agree, I'm sure. So
Yeah,
maybe that's where we see it. And of course, what they talk about too, the subject matter sort of revolving around like film criticism and the way that a filmmaker might see the modern industry. They even take a jab at YouTubers at some point in there. And that was pretty funny. Although I disagree, but, so I mean, like, there's things there that are enjoyable in this film. I just think the biggest issue this film faces out of the gates is that it was clearly an art film, and that is sort of what I guess Oscar bait is. I'm still sort of learning this, but in recent years I've been opening my eyes more, and it seems like it's got all the typical Oscar fare things, but I think because of the conditions of which it was shot in and how quickly it was made, I think that it is just not at that Oscar caliber. Even though the performances are there, there's just a lot missing, I think, like you said. So I think like them pushing this for Oscar films actually takes away from how brilliant of an art experiment this is. I think it's, again, an issue of marketing, to be honest with you, which is the film's biggest block. But take it away, man. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, no. The first thing that I'll say is that it's incredibly apparent that this is an experiment more so than anything else. This, to me, and kind of like what I was able to wrap my head around, is that this was a kind of litmus test as far as determining, okay, what is it? How can we warp the type of entertainment that people are so used to getting and kind of mix and mesh and kind of go in new storytelling directions that allow us to remain as low costly and low budget as much as we can, so we can continue to afford these giant movie stars. Now, granted, it helps that this was probably a labor of love in which all the movie stars were involved, because like probably the director, Sam Levinson, famously, who was the son of very famous Hollywood director Barry Levinson, the director of Rain Man, and many, many other classic Hollywood films. His son, Sam Levinson, has directed a film, Assassination Nation, and then has executive produced the HBO show Euphoria, also starring Zendaya. So he's got a good relationship with Zendaya going there.
Yeah, and so I actually, because you kind of, I can answer one of your questions there. I read an article from Entertainment about like the production, just to sort of prepare a little bit for tonight. And essentially, with Euphoria not being able to shoot because of like how I haven't watched the show, but I guess it's just a typical show, and there's a lot more people involved. Zendaya and the director have a real connection from that first season, and so they hit each other up and they're like, hey, like, there is still a way to make something. It's going to be a bit art house. It's going to be a bit guerrilla style. But if you're down, I'm down. And so they kind of were like, let's do it. Let's just make something, because they were pretty much dying in quarantine. So the story goes. So there's kind of your answer there in regards to like how it came about.
That answers a lot, because honestly, that's what this feels like. And again, like you said, the film student in me really, really wants to appreciate this. And it was... what's it called? And again, I'm always appreciative when we have something new, because it creates for something to discuss. Obviously we're stuck in this long form. What's up, Basic? What's up, Matt? Good to have you here. Thanks for hanging out with us. But I was gonna say that kind of, it's good to know that we can have something new, especially now in this state of quarantine. Because obviously just having anything new can be so few and far between. And I'm still amazed, because I'm almost a month and a half into the year, and I've only seen 4 films, which again is like a record-breaking
for
low.
you. That's out of character.
For a record-breaking low, and 2 of those movies were Sundance Film Festival movies. Like, I probably would have had more if I'd known ahead of time. But so kind of my thought there is, yes, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because yes, I'm glad that Hollywood people are still kind of creative enough and still have that creative spark to just go out there and make something, kind of knowing that Netflix will buy it and put it out, because they'll literally put out anything. But on the other hand, I'm like, okay, but why does it have to be rich Hollywood people that are just trying to poke fun at like stuff like this? Why can't we just see like kind of new people do this? Why can't we see more guerrilla artists do this? Just like, why can't like we see just like this it's like you said, this to me is like, it's easy for them to do, So yeah, it's creative, and yeah, it's interesting, and it's a good exercise in writing, and it's good exercise in basic filmmaking. But I'm like, at its core, right? It has to be like something that I care about. And the problem is that like, I don't care about like kind of rich, privileged Hollywood people trying to like, make social justice. Like, you know what it is? It's this film is trying to pay so much homage. It's almost pulling like a weird Zack Snyder thing, and I'll get to that in a little bit, where it's trying to pay homage visually so much, but it doesn't have any of the creative substance there underneath,
Yeah, I can definitely see why you would say that. I think when I read that article, I tried to put myself in their shoes, which is something I don't normally do, but it kind of subconsciously, as I was thinking about it throughout the day, crept into my thoughts. So I just decided to roll with it. And so I think the frustration, essentially, this movie is a giant argument between a couple who obviously has been through a lot and has their issues they need to work out. And I felt that them having, John David Washington's character be this director who just had his first smash hit and now it's going to go wide soon and the early reviews are coming out. And so it kind of reminded me of, or not reminded me, it made me think this is the director talking to us. I don't know if this is true or not. I haven't seen him say anything, but he's frustrated. He's in quarantine. He's got a lot of anger. And I think that this is him sort of venting in a sense, in a very artistic way. And so once I thought about that and how creative the camera was, you had like that sort of duplicitous moment where you kind of see them through the mirror and they're distorted, but the shot is so beautiful that like it gets both of them in like that old kind of fashion, like double mirror that like old hotels and stuff would have, like from the 80s,
Right.
And so I was like, okay, there's like a lot of cool visual symbolism here that backs up what I would assume most creators feel, because I know we did, frustrated over the lockdown, not being able to get out there and express ourselves. Thankfully, we have an outlet where we can do this each week.
Right.
They don't. So when I think about it like that, I sympathize with them and kind of can see past some of what you said. But then as like a critic, it's tough because I was impressed, but I do share some of your similar sentiments as well. Like it's strange that the movie that John David Washington, is he a good actor? Is he not? That argument has been put to bed for me off of this film. Yeah, he is. It's just like anyone else. If he's not in the right role, it's not going to work for him. It's all about making sure that you match talent up with parts that work for their range and their skill set. But he clearly is a great actor after this film. And Zendaya, who's someone who I knew came from Disney Channel, obviously that wasn't my bag watching that when she was on there. And I haven't seen Euphoria. I haven't seen her in anything. For a first impression, she really blew me away. But again, like, I think it's just the marketing of like this Oscar bait, because they filmed it in black and white and because it's got such beautiful cinematography. It screams Oscar bait when really what it screams is quarantine venting in the most beautiful way. And I think if it was just that, like Host was to Shudder, just that like zeitgeist, this film would not exist without Corona, and this film is a way to create when no one else is allowing us to, then I think this movie would have been received widely with open arms. But because there's like this prestige put on it by like, oh, this is Oscar bait contention. And I understand the performances are Oscar worthy in my opinion, but just so much of the rest of the film isn't, that it's just in this is like the weird middle child that like doesn't get a lot of attention, That's
Yeah.
how I see it.
Yeah, no, I could definitely kind of see it that way. It's funny because this film to me was, it is, yes, an experiment, and it is kind of just like quarantine venting, but at the same time, I'm specifically doing bottle movies as my top 10 this week because I wanted to like kind of talk about and figure out and look at the different types of movies that can like keep you almost entirely in one setting with very little use of cutarounds or flashbacks. And cutarounds and flashbacks obviously are key in order to help with establishing story, especially in a lot of those movies. But the thing that's always impressive about those movies is they always make me forget that I'm in one location, right? And I think kind of another detriment to this, right? And part of the reason why, and I'll get into this in a little bit, why personally to me this was a short film stretched out into a feature-length film, is that I've seen good films done within one location before, but with just the kind of, it also depends on kind of the type of story and the amount of story that's involved in there. And this to me was just, it was not enough story overall to equal a feature-length film. Like there are large sections to me that could have been cut down easily as far as kind of getting to the point overall. I also just think that like the emotional payoff just, I don't want to say wasn't satisfying, but didn't feel like it had enough gusto. I'm not saying that like it needed to end with one of them leaving them or something, but just like,
No, I know exactly what you mean.
yeah, something a little bit more than what we got,
Totally, because I thought, okay, so what's going on in boxing? Thanks for hanging out, man. Let us know what you thought of this film if you saw it. I thought that at first, this film did a really good job of like sucking me in right away. Like instantly, I was like, oh, I'm locked in. This is interesting. I like this. The house is very, something about that house, like you want to shoot a movie in it. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
got a cinematic look. That window
It's a
above the
Hollywood
bedroom.
house.
Yeah, it's I think they said they were up in Malibu or something, right?
Something like that.
So yeah, it's like it's just a really awesome looking house, and it's just got like this cinematic quality to it, and like the windows allow you to do all these creative cinematography, and they kind of come out swinging hard. And I was like instantly locked in, but then something happened around like Act 2, if you can call it that, the middle section of the movie, because really it's what part of the argument do they deem Act 2 or 3, right?
Right.
But where I was like, oh, so they're starting to overstay their welcome, like they're over explaining their points.
Yes.
Okay. And it sucks because it's like it's not never interesting because the acting is still really good, but then it's also just like you're saying the same thing just in a different way with bigger words now.
Right.
You
Pretty
know?
much.
And it
Yeah.
kind of and then really that last sequence between both of them
Oh my god.
was just
That's
a
when I was
huge
starting to feel it.
When
That's when I
she's-
was really starting to feel it.
yeah, when she's got him down on the bed and he's laying on his back and they just have that dialogue exchange and it's like, yeah, you guys just had the same scene on the floor.
Yeah. And you
And you
to
didn't offer
realize the
anything new
repetitive
this
nature
time.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's
It makes me feel like a Marvel movie in a way, where I'm just getting the same thing
What do you
fed to me over and over again. But only there's no action or blowing stuff up. It's
So-
just two people arguing in a house.
yeah, I know. And it's like, to be honest, I thought I really, really enjoyed the we got a few comments. Hang on. I like
Ronald
this
E. Smith gets it. Ronald
I
E.
like that
Smith
comment. That's why I
absolutely
stopped.
gets it.
Yeah, did you guys think that they overstayed their welcome a little bit towards the end? That's kind of what we were just saying for all those of you who just tuned in. I did, but so let's kind of take it back to you were talking about the house and the aesthetic.
Yeah.
I thought that they obviously looked awesome. They looked like they just came from the event that they said they came from. Like it all worked except the old school credits in the beginning of the film, 1930s, 1940s intro, and the black and white. Like it didn't enhance the experience. Like for example, in Mank, which is set in that time zone and it's an homage to old Hollywood, that deemed black and white. Like if they did that in color, it would have worked, but I think that there was something that the black and white offered, whereas in this, it kind of, I don't want to use the word pretentious because I don't think this project is pretentious, although I think it's rushed, and I think there's a difference between the two. But the black and white as a decision didn't offer anything. I actually felt it kind of distracting. What was your take on that? Because it's this modern house, this modern setting,
I
and
didn't
yet
find the black and white distracting in the sense of like anything other than an aesthetic choice. Like I can tell when something is shot in a way in order to suit the period that suits the story versus when something is just a stylish artistic choice. And I'm usually just okay with either of them. That being said, as far as the stylism goes, Sam Levinson is kind of definitely starting to show his hand as a director, where this is the third thing that I've seen now. Well, technically second, because I haven't actually seen Euphoria yet, where it definitely seems like everything he's been doing, like Assassination Nation was awesome, but then I realized, oh no, it's about as surface level as you could possibly get. Like if you watch that movie that he did, every single character in that movie is like as surface level, so obvious and obnoxious, like very one-note characters. Like the issue is literally like, okay, we're divisive. And I'm starting to have a bad feeling that it's getting to his head and he's starting to think that he's smarter than he actually is, because I was seeing that kind of all over the place here, where this whole movie was the definition of, oh, I'm going to shoot this as artsy as I possibly can. And I'm going to have them talk about issues that seem so prevalent and so important because they seem like the most talked about on film Twitter. And I'm going to make a whole movie about that. And I'm like, that's maybe a half-hour dialogue exchange. Like, just about,
Yeah, I definitely see some of that. And kind of like when you say smarter than he is, it just instantly reminded me of John David Washington's character.
Yep.
Not the performance, of course. I mean, I think we both can agree that was a really...
Yeah, well, I want to save that. I want to talk about that.
All right. So with that being said, then I do want to sort of further elaborate on why I do not think the black and white worked. When you have a reason to do something, you don't need to ask the question if it was the right choice. You just kind of watch it and it's there and it enhances the experience. I just think this film was shot and felt like, I don't know, like it has that rawness that we see in some of the more like family oriented, like I'd say A24 films, like Lady Bird style. Not like they're crazy intense films, but it has like that like modern cinematography to it. And they should have embraced that. They did with the camera shots. They did with the creativity of, John's character dancing to the Rick James song in the beginning. No, it wasn't Rick James. I'm going to kill myself for not being able to remember his name right now. But
You'll get it. You'll think.
And it's like, wow, and so he's like dancing and they're doing that pan. It was all so modern, and then they have like this black and white on it. It felt so 2019, and I love that about it, because I think like a lot of really cool, interesting romantic or relationship troublesome films like Marriage Story, which I really loved, came out around that time, and like it has that feel of what's kind of in right now. And then they just made a creative choice that kind of took away from that. Whereas I think they should have leaned into it. I thought that was kind of like really cool, refreshing, young couple arguing, young film director, young, girlfriend who's an actress, but her confidence might get in the way. It was all kind of boding well for it. And then there's just this black and white. But on top of that, the old homage to Hollywood, I wouldn't even call it an homage, just the old film credits in the beginning offered nothing to the story. And so that instantly just irked me. But then we got over it because like these characters sucked me in. So much of this film saved by them to me. But you're right. Like, I don't want to say pretentious just because I think this was rushed. And so I think like, again, if there wasn't this Oscar stigma around it, this Oscar buzz around it, I'd be talking about this film in a completely different light. But we have to consider that, I think, because of how people are, putting it in the zeitgeist as such.
Well, here's what's funny about that is this film I thought was being touted as an Oscar contender, but it's really not. It's been recognized by the Critics' Choice, and that's it. And the Critics' Choice just recognizes everything. But other than that, like none of the main ceremonies, like not the SAGs, not the Golden Globes, most definitely not the BAFTAs, like none of them have recognized that. So that's interesting. So that to me makes this stand out less as a potential Oscar contender, as more in just like an indie art house experiment. That's what that says to me immediately. But
okay, and it's also James Brown, not Rick James.
It is James Brown. Okay. So the other thing that I wanted to get into is kind of, again, like what you were talking about before with separating the kind of the artistry and kind of the point behind the film from the characters. Because for the most part, I was actually interested in these characters. And I think these are good performances. And I think in a different movie, one with a little bit more action and a little bit more just like kind of gusto, I think these actors could have really worked. And I think this could have been a really interesting story. That being said, this film, like one extended scene or like 3 different scenes that kind of should have been spread out over a different movie did them no favors personally. I think even the biggest takeaways being that I'm like, oh wow, Zendaya can like give like a really interesting and introspective performance after what seemed to be a string of really kind of surface level blockbuster film performances, obviously the Spider-Man movies, and she seemed to be doing well with this guy Sam Levinson with Euphoria. There was a couple other things that I was seeing her in that I'm like, oh god, why is she doing this? I personally think that of the people the most that the MCU is let down the most, she is one of them overall. But so she really impressed me. John David Washington, on the other hand, so this is the 3rd major thing that I've seen him in now, ever since he kind of has made his run for movie stardom since retiring from football and Ballers. After BlacKkKlansman and Tenet, I made this description before in that Spike Lee could literally direct anything. So Spike Lee could definitely direct Denzel's son to give an incredible performance. And Tenet, you don't watch, let's be honest, you don't watch Tenet for the performances. Like, you watch it for the spectacle, and the spectacle enhances the characters overall. So there's not much that John David Washington has to do there other than be incredibly physical, which he's already good at. This, to me, is the first time where he's like, okay, the movie is really depending on him acting, right? And he tries to overcompensate with some physicality a little bit. Personally, to me, that was the goofiest part of the movie. I kind of took me completely out when he's doing like that weird like dance fight or whatever he's doing on the lawn. I'm just really confused by that, and I'm like, what is going on there? So that's the only part that took me out. But this was the most to me where he's finally emulating his dad, and he's finally emulating Denzel. Like, there were points where he was yelling, like I could straight up hear Denzel, and I'm like, man, this is an awesome monologue, and I could totally see this working in a movie that was not just him yelling at his wife about how smart he is. Because that's the other thing that was like really driving me nuts, is I'm like, oh, great. This is another one of these movies where the genius and misunderstood artist has to yell at his wife, who then, what's it called? And then the movie ends up getting saved by the fact that the wife is actually the more interesting 3-dimensional character. But still, to me, that's good characterization, but wrong focus as far as the movie goes. And I think that's a really sad mistake because, we've seen that work in so many other better movies than this.
Yeah, I hear that. I actually got a lot more out of his performance than I think you did, because I thought that moment when he was on the lawn, I've done that when I've been very frustrated before. My body just took over and I didn't know what it was doing, but I was so angry because everything in front of me was crumbling around. And I've done that. I've been there. I've done that. I actually thought they did a really good job capturing the human emotion in those kind of intense, sort of clawing your way out of a bad situation environments. Like I thought what kept me really in this film, amidst all of, I think, the welcoming being overstayed, the poor writing, let's call it, and some of the not my taste directional sort of sensibilities, like the black and white and some of the other distracting things, whereas actually like how, you know, these actors, there's not anything here but an argument where we throughout the night get bits and pieces of where they were just at, which is this movie premiere, and there's this actor called Taylor and she's the lead, and did he flirt with her, did he not, this, that, and the other thing, you know. It's all pretty generic, it's all couple stuff, and we've seen it in films before, but I thought what was real about it was just the way that they sort of went through the motions and the chemistry between these two and the way that they expressed their frustration and their anger. It felt so human to me, especially because I've been there, done that, in that moment when he just like doesn't know what to do with his body. He's so angry. He's supposed to be enjoying everything in front of him right now, but he just can't because like it's not meant for him to be perfect. And so I actually really felt that and understood that moment because I've been there, done that. And so with that being said, man, like these two, and specifically him, because I think he was at first very cool and then very shouty, and then sort of just, you know, was he trying to poke and prod her, but then he realized he shouldn't. And it was just like his brain was so scrambled from the writing that he was given, and he did such a good job conveying what I would imagine that situation's like. So yeah, I don't know. I definitely got way more out of his performance, and this is the performance that squashed the is he a good actor, is he not a good actor for me.
Right.
Done.
So,
100% done. Like I thought that not that it's the only film that I've seen, but this is going to be a hard performance to beat for me for this year. I can already tell.
yeah, so I wanted to go back to the physicality aspect for a second. I'm not saying that what he was doing was unbelievable. What I'm just saying is just like the way that he was portraying it came off as unintentionally funny. Which I'm like, yeah, I never want to see that in a movie. Like if somebody's like going through something like that, I never want to see a moment that's going to take me out of the movie and make that moment unintentionally funny. And I think, like I said, going back to kind of my point before, it's a matter of focus. I think that obviously, just if that were in like a much bigger movie with kind of like a lot more elements fleshed out that we could see, it would have made a difference, obviously. But also just the fact that just for in that instance, in that context, in the sense that it was so kind of that struggle is the one half of it. And that to me is just so uninteresting because we've seen that so many times. And then you actually have Zendaya presenting like something that maybe we necessarily haven't seen, you know, just not necessarily harping on the fact that she's a recovering addict, but more so just the fact that like she's trying to look for kind of love and admiration in like the wrong ways, you know. And I feel like kind of the part that they choose to have him play, it kind of ends up falling into toxic patterns. And I'm like, oh, we've seen these before. Do we have to keep doing this? You know, it didn't feel new or original to me per se, as like maybe the intention was. Now, if that was the intention, I'm like, okay, why? It's a strange intention overall, kind of. And I don't want to conflate like artist opinion versus like what's actually being presented. You know, there definitely are times where interpretation can kind of fall in on itself with how deep you're trying to go with something that doesn't seem inherently that deep. But that being said, it's like, come on, if you're trying to say something, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that they kind of did say something, though. I think that they showed, you know, sort of the dynamic between two people who know each other so well, but there's always that extra layer that you can get to know to a person, and how you can even hide something from someone you're the closest to just because, you know, you don't want to show that side. Or maybe in her case, she didn't want to show that weakness to him. And in his case, you know, was he sort of overlooking her because she didn't show him that weakness? I thought they actually did a really good job showing the relationship. I just think that there wasn't enough for them to argue about after a certain amount of time, but their struggle and their strife felt real to me. It felt believable. And that's why, like, the word funny never even popped into my head while watching this. Nothing was ever humorous. In fact, if anything, it was just kind of like, well, I'm glad I'm not in there. I'm glad I'm not in their shoes right now. You know, like I never want to be in a relationship like that, because that is, I'm taking notes from this one in that regard. You know what I mean? I'm not, because that the last thing I find is humor in that. That's a very scary situation, I would say. That they ruined a perfectly nice evening. But all that being said, you know, I kind of want to jump to her performance.
Yeah.
Because she's great too. She was awesome.
See, the one takeaway that I will say is that Zendaya was legitimately terrific in this.
Yeah, because like I said, like this movie was, it was just a little bit above like average, but the performances really are special. And it's so weird to say that because usually when you have, in my opinion, performances this special, the film is equally as special. But we'll keep unpacking that as we go along. But with her in specific, man, I thought like the range, and when she's sitting there and she's in the bathtub and she's just taking jab after jab after jab, and like the slow, like sort of stutter in the lip, and then like the one tear, it was, I mean, I don't want to say masterful, but it was just, I was into it. Like that was before the film started to overstay its welcome as well. But even towards the end, that one scene where she kind of reenacts the movie scene in front of him, and we don't know that, which I actually thought was really clever writing. And then we find out that, like, oh wow, that would have been her in the film. And we, of course, we don't know what the film is about, which I actually think is a charm of this movie, because the movie's not about the film that was made. It's about their dynamic and how much the film is taken from their dynamic. But it was all like super believable and strong, her performance. But there's just something about it where they just, like that bedroom scene at the end, that big bang scene where we're about to get the end here, it's almost over. They just always said like 4 or 5 sentences more than they needed to. So it's like we have all this amazing buildup, and then it just kind of dilutes itself at the end and doesn't kind of go out on the high that I was kind of riding until the end of it. But even up until then, there were moments that kind of like diluted themselves as time goes on. But it's just them being so locked into these roles that carried me through it. So like I got to give them more credit, I think, than you are, because I thought there was a lot of charm there and real like talent shown from both of these people who, for my understanding, have had question marks around their acting ability for quite some time.
The acting is most definitely solidified, but I wanted to bring it back to kind of the thing that I feel like kind of jumpstarts this subgenre of filmmaking that we're talking about, kind of the bottom film. Well, I take it back to Reservoir Dogs and the idea that we are, for the most part, with the exception of the flashbacks, in that one location with them that entire time as they're trying to figure this thing out. And I think back to this movie, and obviously, again, this movie has no time jumps or anything, no flashbacks or anything. It's all entirely in this movie. And I think kind of the comparison to the dialogue, right? And how I'm like, okay, this dialogue should be so engaging, right? What is it missing? Like, is it kind of just the peripheral sense that this is on Netflix where I'm checking the time clock every second just by nature? Is it the fact that I've just become more impatient by nature? Or is it the fact that the story is simply just not engaging or grabbing me enough, And I think about, like, the specific dialogue exchanges in Reservoir Dogs and how even seeming at their most overwritten, and obviously Tarantino is a very specific example, but even at their most overwritten, they always seem to matter, and every single word that came out just mattered. And after a while, it's like you said, they're just repeating themselves and repeating themselves and repeating themselves. That, to me, is not the sign of an experiment. That's a sign of, okay, we just have to fill time overall. And that's never something that we should do. And that one, and before you say anything, that did want to bring me up to my last point that I wanted to say, which is, to me, the definition of a good bottle movie, which is a good bottle movie always makes you forget that you're in one location. And this, unfortunately, broke the only rule that bottle movies are supposed to follow, which is that it made me painfully aware that we were in one location over and over again. And as many creative things that they tried, I still think that there were more that they could have done as far as kind of what the scenarios that they could have invoked that would have made the story more interesting. Like, I've seen conversational pieces, but this one was not it as far as keeping my interest going.
Yeah, all that I can agree with 110%. I just think that there is some of that. It's on Netflix and your phone's in front of you, and there's, you're in your room and there's your gadgets everywhere, and you're at your house, so there's things like that you got to get done. There's some of that for sure. And honestly, this film, until like the third act kind of kept me away from that, which most Netflix movies don't. So I got to give it that. It was a tier above most Netflix movies. But I think where it really falls on its feet is it falls short rather is I just don't think that it shouldn't be what it is. I think it should be more of like an expression, more of an art project rather than a movie. And if it happens to have huge stars in it like Zendaya and John David Washington, don't market it as a movie though. Market it
Right.
as an expression, as a
'Cause
reaction
Netflix
to
has
a
been doing
moment.
stuff like that too. Because Netflix has been doing like a lot of stuff, like those weird half-hour, like those weird 10-minute projects. Like they did like the Dave Harbour, Orson Welles thing, and they did the David Lynch monkey thing, and they do kind. They still
Yeah.
do these weird little experiments. Like, why can't they do more of those?
And that
I'm a
David
fan
Harbour
of
thing
them.
was amazing.
Yeah, you know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah, it was funny.
Like Netflix is actually like taking interesting and creative risks like that. Why can't they do something like that still? That to me is the key as far as like where these types of projects should be. You know,
100%. You know, to me, it almost seems like the director is. I'm a director and I'm prestigious. And so I don't want to have something be labeled an experiment or a quarantine project. No, I'm making a film. I don't care if I wrote it in 6 months or if I wrote it in 6 years. And I just think that for as much great direction as was given, it just doesn't seem like the overall idea of what this project should be as opposed to what it was. They didn't meet in the middle there and kind of give us, like, for example, a Reservoir Dogs is meant to be that type of film. This does not feel like it's meant to be the type of film that it is, but it's strong enough where you kind of hate to hate on it because there are some things in it that are really, really amazing to watch.
Yeah.
But
I'll tell you what the key mistake was, as far as the difference being, is that Reservoir Dogs obviously was really supposed to have the heist in it, and then it got cut out because of budgets. The thing is that you have to make this film was trying to be kind of proactive and kind of like, you know, they start right after the event, so you don't actually see the event that causes, you know, all the strife and the drama. Reservoir Dogs made the very smart decision of still making it so that that event would have like ripple effects on the rest of the characters throughout the movie. And this did not do that because it's a movie premiere and he didn't cast this one actress. That's it. You know, like that's not engaging to me, you know, as far as kind of like the ripple effect accident. It's like, he didn't cast her in the part. It definitely seems like, yeah, that should have been like the inciting incident of like a movie that would like involve them going other places and like maybe seeing other people. But like just as far as this goes, I'm like, not as engaging.
yeah, I mean, I guess like to me, the inciting incident would be and I thought it was, you know, to me, it was clear that it was sort of when he's doing the whole mac and cheese thing. He's dancing around, pouring himself a drink, putting on music, and she's clearly like, she's not going to bring it up unless he asks, but she's ticked off. And so I just don't think that was meant to. I mean, that was just the start of the film. So I think maybe that's where we'll agree to disagree. I wasn't watching for what happened before the film started. I was watching for their dynamic and their argument that they were in, which we get various bits and pieces of the night throughout that, of course. But still, even with that being said, I do agree with you in the sense that like something falls short here. And, you know, like the score is great, but then after a while, it kind of got tiresome hearing the music tell us what was happening because it was pretty obvious. And where it went as being artistic in the first few acts, then it kind of got annoying. She's playing this one song at the end where it's like, I love him, but then the choir in the song saying, but kick him out. And she's like, but I can't, but kick him out. And that was very on the nose and kind of forced, in my opinion. So we might disagree on where we're coming from watching it, but I think our sentiments are similar in our overall
sentiments when it comes to kind of our problems with the third act and the overall structure and format of the movie and how it overstays its welcome and how I think we can agree the director might be a little bit kind of thinks he's smarter than he really is. As far as kind of that goes, that's where I kind of get the Baz Luhrmann elements from, like because Baz Luhrmann did Moulin Rouge and Australia. And all those other ridiculous movies that I'm completely drawing a blank on. But
yeah, I hate to say that, but it's just like I can't not think that when there's black and white for no reason and there's old school credits in the beginning for no reason.
And like if if you see his other stuff too, you'll see what I'm talking about as well. Because he did the same thing with Assassination Nation.
Really? Okay.
Like that movie is ridiculous. That's what makes it awesome and really watchable. But that movie is very much screams like, A24 music video look. Like,
see, I want to
ask like 5 years too late though.
See, I like the cinematography though a lot in this film. I thought it was actually
the
really creative.
What is the third best thing behind the two lead stars?
I agree 100%. But you know what I think really takes me out of it? It's what you've been driving home this whole conversation. A good bottle film doesn't make you feel like you're in a bottle. It's the writing. At the end of the day, as great as these actors are, they're not great because of what they're given. They're great because of how they're giving you what they were given.
Yes.
And they clicked so amazingly perfectly, so well. But it's thin. It's, but it was a quarantine project. They wrote it so quickly. They
Right.
produced it. So it's like,
But like, I'm not gonna like allow that to like affect my judgment of it as a film. Like, if anything, like I said, the best films are made under harrowing circumstances. So it's like, if this
True.
is the best that you can give me, like, I'm sorry, I've got
You're
like,
right.
way more low budget films that have done way more with way less before this. If this is the best that you can give me, like, I'm worried. I'm not gonna lie.
Plus, those films you're probably referencing didn't have the luxury of knowing John David Washington's agent or Zendaya. So,
Exactly. Having giant movie stars. Majority of those movies had like nobodies in them. They just worked with what they had.
No, you're totally right. The last point that I kind of wanted to bring up and get your take on was, in regards to this film, man, I want to like, it's so conflicting because the character work is awesome. And I really thought the character work was great, but now that we've sort of discussed it and I've gotten your opinion and sort of seeing where you and some of the chat's coming from, I don't know who to credit that to, and I don't want to credit it to the director now. Because sometimes actors just have chemistry.
I don't credit a film experience ever until I've seen the entire thing and until I can weigh the whole thing together as like how all the pieces work. Like, I can't take it just based off of performance or just based off of the director. I always have to give it credit to where all the creative people who were involved and obviously all the people that were there on set actually making it happen and how the idea came to be conceptualized. That's kind of who I give the credit to overall. And even if I don't necessarily know who the specific people are in general, I just know that it's always more than one. And the thing that I say is that I always have to take the good parts of the film with the parts of the film that legitimately don't make it work and kind of conflate them with each other and see what kind of wins out. And while I will say the technical aspects of it and the acting is great, there are just too many other aspects with the story and kind of the inception of it that just don't make this work overall as a film.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that the character work is going to be their chemistry, because I think all signs point to it not being a terrible film from the director, but it's certainly being a film that I don't think translated the way that he thinks it is. Kind of like that review that John David Washington's character read. It was a solid review, but he was just finding things in it that he didn't like.
Things in it that he didn't like. It's like, okay, we get it. This isn't a criticism on the internet. But
yeah, and I feel like it's the reverse of that, where he's probably like, I made a great movie, and he's like, how are all these people finding little things they didn't like with it? It's kind of funny there.
It's like, what it reminds me of? Because this is the second thing, because Netflix did that Death to 2020 special, which I heard was awful.
I never want to talk about that.
I heard that was really bad.
If there was one movie I can get my time back for, and I watched it in their 1.25 speed at the end when I realized what it was.
Oh, man.
But I have to finish. I'm a completionist. I have to finish something if I start it.
That trailer was painful. That's one of the most painful things I think I've ever seen, just on the internet in general.
You dodged the bullet, man.
And the one thing I'll say about that is that seems to be kind of like the latest trend of like, oh, we're obviously in quarantine, so what are we gonna do in order to like try and sound the most cool and the most relevant? And but I'm like, guys, it's the same like kind of hashed out jokes that I've heard for the last 4 years. Like, like come up with something new. And now you're like trying to be internet commentators. First of all, we know Hollywood is always behind the 8 ball when it comes to critiquing the internet, even the people on Netflix. And it's just really fun. It's just really funny when it's like, oh, we're bringing up cool and relevant points, but we're not bringing them up in subtle ways, and it just kind of just gets annoying. Like, I don't watch a movie if I wanted to have a message shouted at my face, I'd fucking have PTSD flashbacks to dare presentations in 5th grade. Like, I that's not what I want when I watch my entertainment.
Yeah, I agree. That Death to 2020 was basically all of the jokes that like Colbert and Fallon and Kimmel didn't get to use throughout the last 4 years, and they were like, well, we got to do something with them. There's still some time to use them. And so like
pay a bunch of actors to just sit in their homes and record something really cool and just them saying the jokes.
Yeah, and of course Samuel L. Jackson's got to be charming in everything he does. It's like it's his gift, man. So like just even in the worst of things he's in to be decent. Like, it's crazy. But, hey, man, Malcolm and Marie, any final thoughts on it, I suppose?
An interesting experiment. I'm still looking forward to what this director does next, because I still think that he's got a really good movie in him. So far, he's just made meh movies. Acting is good. Technicals are great. I just wish the story overall was better. So I had to give it, unfortunately, only 3 out of 5 stars.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's a 3 out of 5 stars for me as well. I was going to give it a 3.5, but sort of like having this conversation with you and realizing that it's kind of just one of those situations where 2 actors click and they carry it, because I can't really, knowing filmmaking and then having done this show for so long, dissecting things and sort of taking them apart in the way we do, I feel confident in saying that that charm doesn't come from the director. Although he did a lot of things right. Technicals, amazing. Cinematography, so cool. So brilliant.
Score, awesome. I love the name of the guy who did the music. The guy's name is just, I mean, I don't know. You're a music guy, so this might be your area of expertise. But the guy's name is Labyrinth, but with an R-I.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he is in a project with Sia and Diplo called LSD.
Nice.
Labyrinth, Sia, and Diplo. I'm gonna look that up right now to see if that's actually him, because I was wondering about that, because I don't know him to be. He's like an R&B singer. He's like an awesome pianist, and he writes kind of like John Legend style, sort of like pop, but it's got like that like R&B soul feel to it.
Right.
So I'm wondering if it's the same guy. But yeah, either way, if it's not, funny that there's two famous people with the same name in the industry right now that both make music.
Wouldn't surprise me, nor would it be the first time.
Yeah. Oh, it is him. Okay. So he tried his hand at scoring, and I thought he was pretty good at it, to be honest with you. And the music direction was really solid too.
Yes.
Like I thought that, having the artist that they chose, like it did get corny after a while, but the songs did add something at the same time. It's just they over-explained it. So, we got some Jarens in the chat. Dude.
Oh my God, Jaren,
in a
you're
minute,
alive.
man. Good to see you. Hope you're having a good start to the new year. He said he thinks the film is absolutely amazing. He was blown away. Sorry he missed the rest. Don't worry about that, man. We just appreciate you stopping by. It's an A+ from him. Keep up the good work. You too, man. You too. I see you growing out there, grinding. We'll have to link up again soon. But yeah, it's a 3 out of 5 for all the reasons I said. It was super enjoyable. I think marketing once again strikes in the worst way possible. This clearly was just like an expression of artistic frustration with lockdown, and it shouldn't have been hyped up to be anything more. I heard Oscar fodder. That's why I came in thinking about that. The people I watch, the circles I see, were all hyping it up for that. But you heard something different. Either way, not an awards film, just a really cool expressionate piece. And the last thing I got to ask you, Dom, before we jump out of here is,
all right,
I want to watch Euphoria now because I really want to see more of Zendaya. And I thought like her acting was great, but now I don't really want to credit the character work to the director. So I'm in a pickle here with that one.
Honestly, here's the thing. Euphoria is on my list as far as shows to catch up with. But at the same time, I'm like, look, if they're not even going to have like a cohesive thing, like they had a, obviously, again, they did the 2 specials in place of not being able to shoot the second season, obviously. But, like, does that still warrant? I'm still wondering if it's going to be one of those shows that warrants kind of my time, because, like I said, I'm in a weird spot TV-wise because I'm like, I have shows that I have to catch up on, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm dipping into other areas. Like, I just started watching The League for the first time the other day, and that
great show.
That seems like my kind of a show right there.
That's a great show.
That might
what
be a show.
What made you want to watch that?
I'll tell you exactly what it was, because this is going to spawn a whole different tangent. I have been endlessly fascinated by, like, that would always just be that show that I saw, like, kind of advertisements for on Hulu, and whenever I would, like, explore other FX stuff, and I just recognized enough of the actors. I'm like, oh, Mark Duplass, Nick Kroll, and Paul Scheer, and Steve Renazzisi, those guys are all pretty funny. It's got the chick who played David's sister in Legion in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched the first episode, and let me tell you something, Chris. I've not gotten a feeling like that since I watched Entourage on HBO. Like, dude, that's just kind of my kind of comedy, just like super stupid, super bro-y comedy with like just about a bunch of suburban dads that take their fantasy football league way too seriously. I don't know a goddamn thing about fantasy football, but I have a feeling that that's not going to matter with this show.
No, it doesn't really. It's actually kind of nice. It's just enough for like me who likes football to give me the extra mile. Yeah, I never really speak about that show that much, but I watched it when it was airing and stuff. I love that show.
Right. Might be something worth up for us to talk about.
I'd be cool with that. I'd honestly be cool with revisiting it. And I just want to say, as much as I love you, I never want to see your vinegar strokes. We'll leave it there.
Okay, all right.
Anyways,
I only watched the first episode.
You let me know when you see that, and you'll be thankful I said that.
Definitely.
Anyways, guys, that seems to be it in regards to Malcolm and Marie, right?
Yeah, pretty much. No,
what more can we say?
We got some more TV. We got some more movies coming your guys' way. Obviously, we got a big review coming next week with Judas and the Black Messiah. That will definitely give us a lot more to talk about. I've kind of heard that is kind of the scene sealer insert. That's like the one big early 2021 movie that's like, yeah, Daniel Kaluuya is definitely getting a nomination for that. He's just been nominated for everything so far. So we'll see how that goes, obviously, going into it. Once again, we got more recaps of WandaVision. We just recapped that big surprise this past Friday with David of Flicks Talk, and we've got the episode 6 review coming this coming Friday, all the way on and on and on throughout this coming Wednesday. I've got my top 10 bottle movies going up next Wednesday, Chris. Next
Nice,
Wednesday,
man.
Tell them about it, dude. Next Wednesday, we've got a
All I'll say is
big interview coming up.
Yeah, all I'll say is that it's one of my favorite shows that I won't shut up about, that it seems that no one's seen, and I'm not just like trying to get hipster cred here. I could care less about that. It's just I think people need to hear about this show. So we're speaking to Kim's Convenience star Omar, and dude, Omar is such a cool character, man. Like, I'm excited because there's kind of two sitcoms that live inside of Kim's Convenience, and I don't know how far into it you are yet, but he's on one of those sides, and there's not much of a crossover yet. It's a cohesive show, and so this is a dynamic sitcom. I really think it's something different. So Kim's Convenience, guys, we're speaking with Omar of Kim's Convenience. It's going to be amazing. If anything, it's just going to be great for me, and I hope Dom likes the show when he watches it. But either way, a celebrity's giving us our time yet again, and that's going to be awesome.
Indeed. Onward and upward, my friend, as always. And like I said, we've got plenty more content that we always have for you guys every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday going forward. We've got so much stuff planned. We cannot thank you guys enough for sticking around with us for the new year. Season 3, we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary on YouTube, people. That's going to be a tremendous event overall. Of course, make sure you click the subscribe button and click the bell next to it. That way you get notified every time we put up new content. Leave us a comment in the comment section below. Make sure to click the like button. All of those things just help us get the subscribers. That allows us to continue to give you guys the content that you deserve overall. Also, be sure to follow us on our social media profiles, Facebook and Instagram, at Talkin TV, at Talkin TV Podcast, all around. And Chris, what are we doing?
Oh, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, we said 12 seasons and an art film, a short film.
A short film. 12 seasons and a short film, people. As always, that's our new little hashtag that we're starting. We kind of jacked that, but that's fine. And as always, watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.